Welcome to r/JustNoHOA, where people share stories about their crazy homeowner associations that make us feel better about not living in an HOA. If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our awesome community. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. Today's general topic is gonna be, what is your worst experience with a homeowners association? HOA had roughly $150,000 in the bank with annual expenses of less than $40,000, which was fully covered by monthly dues. The first meeting I went to, the president introduced a motion to remove the requirement for the HOA to have an outside accountant audit the books annually. He claimed the $500 or so that it cost was an unnecessary waste. I freaked out. This was pre-Archer, but I ranted something like, "Do you want embezzlement? Because this is how you embezzle money." I continued that I was very uncomfortable with the HOA holding so much money, and I suggested we do something with it. Maybe build a playground on common property. I did not have kids at the time. The council said that was not possible because of liability if a kid gets hurt. And they have to save to someday replace sidewalks. Sidewalks were less than 5 years old at the time and in perfect condition. When I asked, they had no idea on costs to replace sidewalks, had not even looked into it, but they were sure it was expensive. The crazy thing in my opinion is that I actually got booed. The other attendees wanted to move past the boring budget stuff so they could rant about whose dog pooed on their lawn. So I sat down and listened to about half an hour of dog poop detective work before I left. I never went to another meeting and moved about 18 months later. Maybe not a great story, but I thought it was pretty horrific. I have to say that HOA is pretty smart. If I had $150,000 in my bank account and I would not want anyone else to get a hold of it, the first thing I would do is to definitely get rid of that outside accountant. But seriously, this HOA sounds more like organized crime than a neighborhood improvement. And the next one, not worst so much as most entertaining. Our HOA these days does not do much beyond basic safety stuff like keeping street signs upright and enforcing rules about curb appearance, no statuary or fountains, keep your grass trimmed, that sort of nonsense. And they are pretty tame about that. According to some of my neighbors, they were much more aggressive when the neighborhood was founded 40 years ago. Our neighborhood is split in half by a strip of forest. And right in the middle of this strip is a house owned by a guy I will call Jeff. Now, Jeff was a manager at a local park and a real Ron Swanson type. Jeff bought his strip of forest a few years before the subdivision was conceived, and thus Jeff is not subject to any of the HOA's rules and regulations. However, this was not going to stop the plucky young man who founded our homeowners association. No, he was determined that our neighborhood would follow certain standards. And Jeff was simply not living up to these standards. His yard was overgrown and crawling with local wildlife, and he kept a boat in his driveway. The nerve! Well, the president of the HOA was not having this. He arrived on Jeff's doorstep one day with a packet containing all of the standards the HOA expected its homeowners to live up to. These were such things as no window boxes, no front-facing vegetable gardens, etc. Jeff looked over the packet, calmly informed the president that he would make a note of the regulations and shut the door in his face. The first thing that went up was a fence. Not a solid fence, mind you, but a board and rail fence so that you could see what else Jeff was up to. This prompted the first of many letters from the HOA to Jeff. After he got that letter, he put up a vegetable garden front and center. Another letter arrived and Jeff started renting out space on his lawn for people to store RVs and boats. Another letter and Jeff put up window boxes. I don't know exactly how long this went on, but eventually it escalated to the police. As soon as they found out that Jeff was the proper landowner, they laughed in the HOA's face. Then it escalated into a civil suit about property values or whatever, and the judge dismissed the case on similar grounds. Nowadays, Jeff is retired and putters around his house in and day out, filling up hummingbird feeders, replacing light bulbs on the Christmas lights he keeps strung up 365 days a year, run off a huge solar panel planted in his front lawn, naturally, and just generally being an awesome old dude. And our HOA has basically been neutered by the whole ordeal, and hesitates to file a complaint against even the most egregious violations. I'm looking at you, family that clearly runs some sort of business out of their garage. Indeed guys, maybe it only takes one guy to be awesome and to not comply with the HOA, and maybe they will just stop annoying everybody in the future. And by the way, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. Thank you very much for all the support. And the next story is particularly interesting because it shows a different side of HOAs. I will chime in from the other side of things. I served as our HOA president for 1 year, just one. I was basically convinced to run solely to keep one of our psycho neighbors from getting the spot. Nobody else was running, that should have been a red flag in hindsight, and the voting consisted of the 15 or so people that actually showed up the meeting. For the next year, all I did was answer emails from every whiny person and bored old person about every minor infraction and inconvenience. We did what we were supposed to do, communal areas were mowed, playground was kept clean, and neighbors were told they could not pave their front lawn. Seriously, some guy submitted the paperwork requesting to put in a patio that was just a 3,000 square feet concrete slab taking up about 90% of his front lawn. The complaints were around 5% of the residents logging 95% of the complaints, including stuff we had zero authority over. No, Resident X, the city sprays for mosquitoes, not us. No, we don't repave the roads either, etc. And they were effing mean about it. My favorite example is the guy who literally accused me of wanting people to die because I had not personally fixed the cracked sidewalk, which by the way the city owns. Another fun incident was the drama over some squatters in a foreclosed home. We knew they were there illegally. We later found out that some guy had a business of gaining access to foreclosed homes and renting them out super cheap. But this was during the height of the mortgage crisis. We called the police, but according to them, unless we could prove the owner did not want them there was nothing we could legally do. We could not get a hold of the bank that owned the land, no matter how hard we tried. It had been sold multiple times, and the bank that apparently owned it had a voicemail box that was never not full. The neighbors showed up to a meeting and just screamed at us for a good 15 minutes over the outrage. The funny part is that the people living there had done nothing wrong. In fact, they were maintaining the otherwise crappy looking yard. They did not have a coherent argument about what we should do or what the problem was. They were just mad at us for it happening. At one point, a guy who used to be on the HOA and got voted off for being a dickbag to people blamed us for the lakes being low. Surely it had nothing to do with the record low rainfall. In his words, "Well, when I was on the board, they stayed full." Really, dude? What else? Oh right, the fountain incident. So one of our lakes had a big floating fountain in the middle. Looked nice. Some a-holes stole it. The thing was cemented to the bottom of the lake and ran on 440 volts. They dragged the effer out and cut the live power line. Anyway, some people said they missed it being there, so we replaced it. Then someone complains that the spray pattern of the new fountain nozzle was different from the old one. Also, it was a 100% volunteer thing, but people would constantly accuse us taking a paycheck and doing nothing. The reason I'm telling you all of this is not to make you feel bad for these people. Any sane person, myself included, would never want to do this. So what inevitably happens is that only the crazy people end up doing it for any length of time. You know guys, it's interesting to hear another side of the story, because I'm sure not all HOA presidents are evil. Did you ever have an HOA president that was a nice person? Let us know in the comments. And the next story, I'm currently HOA president and it really is the few who ruin the job. Maintenance, finances, etc. are not really all that much work, and as a stay-at-home mom I can easily fit it in my schedule. In fact, it's nice to have the adult interaction. However, it's the few crazies who make me want to rage quit and never talk to anyone again. One resident emailed me asking for the names of past due homeowners, and when I told her that was private information that I'm not allowed to share, she flooded my inbox with accusations of incompetence, favoritism, embezzlement. She also takes full advantage of her right to request documents and requests every single thing she has a legal right to, and many she doesn't. Any pushback is met with similar results. She has requested that I tow all parked cars in the complex and that I forego due process and preemptively fine people. She also wants a list of who I've sent notices to and when. Another violation of confidentiality. If I don't respond to emails fast enough, she accuses me of hiding things and being difficult. After the past president had already been voted off the board, she accused her of embezzlement, not true, and asked for her immediate resignation and all of her records. The person was already off the board. She has gotten better since then, but her requests can still take up hours of my time. When I see her emails, I often think to myself, is this the one that's going to make me resign? A renter called the city and told them we were completing unpermitted work for every single thing we worked on around the HOA, which the city was then required to investigate. We were never found to be doing anything wrong. He also would have lengthy discussions with me about things we should be doing to avoid lawsuits that were not in any way actually true. Another owner kept accusing her neighbor of watching her sleep and would go outside in the middle of the night yelling, "I see you up there," at her roof and honk her car horn. No one was there. She also decided once that she was going to pass a car and drove straight into someone else's closed garage. She has since moved to a group home for people with dementia. One owner likes to come to meetings and give lengthy reports about the shoddy construction of neighboring complexes. So yes, HOAs can be awful and weirdly strict, but I think it is because any sane person is either going to run away or go insane after having to deal with this. I think in the end you can find positive and decent people everywhere, even in HOAs, but judging by the stories we have heard so far, I am guessing that positive experiences with HOAs are rather in the minority. Let me know your opinion about this in the comments. The next story is about HOAs in Canada. I am in Canada and I'm pretty sure we just call them strata councils. Anyway, in my complex the president is a nosy, bullying woman with way too much time on her hands. She wanders around telling people what to do all the time and yelling at them if she does not like what they say. There is also a guy with diagnosed schizophrenia who does not appreciate her yelling all the time. He is a little odd, but has only once done anything schizophrenic-ish that bothered anyone. My mother-in-law lives across from him and one night he just kept yelling, "F!" over and over, not an issue for her, but strata woman who lives pretty far from him heard about it and confronted him. Much yelling from her, and finally dude had enough and gave it right back. Next AGM, she's pushing for authorization to spend 40k on a lawyer to have him kicked out of the building. She bullied enough people to get the votes and hired the lawyer. Long story short, they lost in court, so Buddy stayed and we were out 40k. Her brilliant plan at that point was to make up a violation and submit a fine for 40k to him. You know, cause he should have to pay back the money she wasted. So he sued over that and got something like 50k in damages. So in a nutshell, she cost us $100,000 and the guy is still here. And she is still on council. Other fun stuff includes a note nailed to our door telling my wife she laughs too loud and she better be quiet or else, from a council member, my car being towed because the stupid "I live here" sticker was not in the right spot of my windshield, council president banning non-residents she does not like, and my favorite, trying repeatedly to ban BBQs because she is a vegetarian and does not like the smell. You know, that's also my favorite. When people don't like something, obviously you have to ban it for everybody else. By the way, when was the last big barbecue that you guys had? Since we are currently having winter, I'm already looking forward to summer to get the grill going. I gotta say, I'm very jealous of everybody who has summer all year round. On to the next one. Well, it's not that bad in comparison to what others have gone through, but it was bad enough that we moved to a non-HOA neighborhood after it happened. Basically, our gate to the side yard was pretty cheap and starting to fall apart. We did not want to replace it with another cheap gate, and so we found a metalworking company that would create a pretty sweet version that would last damn near forever. Since it did not cost any more and looked notably better, we decided to change the top to be a semicircle instead of flat across. Now, those of you who have had run-ins with HOAs saw the word change and immediately knew that there was going to be a serious problem. HOAs don't like change at all. Indeed, the gate was rejected. The official rejection form just said that it needed to follow one of the approved designs, all with flat tops, but our neighbor was at the meeting where they discussed the change, and apparently the rationale was,
"This gate looks far better than all the others on the block. If we allowed it, then it would lower the property value of the rest of the houses."
What? It was rejected because it looked better than the others? And who looks at gates when it comes to deciding to buy a house or not? The absolute capricious nature of this decision was a final straw for us, and we started the house search to get out of there a few weeks later. Guys, I'm curious, let me know in the comments, how good are you guys in general at dealing with changes in your personal life? Personally, I'm not bad at adapting to changes, but usually I am a bit of a creature of habit. Let me know how it is for you. The HOA at my parents' old condo decided to ban the use of parking spaces indefinitely. People assumed they were being repainted or something, but eventually it was discovered that the a-holes on the board thought the complex would look nicer if everyone parked on the road. But of course, the 2 parking lots next to the board member's house were not closed. Changing the HOA rules was intentionally set up to be difficult. Meetings could only be held at 11 AM on workdays, all adult residents of a house had to be present, or that house's vote/input was invalid, stuff like that. In protest, people made sure the lots by the board members were constantly filled with cars, so they would have to park on the road too. Eventually, it culminated with the board illegally towing a bunch of cars. They wrote a new rule about how long cars could be parked in spaces and posted a notice on every door in the complex. The new rule was no car could be parked in the same spot for more than 48 hours, but they decided that the timer was retroactive, and on the very morning the rule was made, immediately started towing any car that had been in a space for the previous 2 days. The condo complex where I grew up was composed almost entirely of low-income Mexican people and low-income white people who are addicted to drugs. Half the cars towed were either custom lowriders or custom trucks and jeeps. A bunch of the lowriders were damaged in the process of towing, and one of the jeeps straight up went missing, apparently stolen by or from the tow company. A tow company, incidentally, later found out to be owned by a board member's brother. I was just a kid and only got the full story much later in life, but all the members of the HOA board got the crap beaten out of them and had their cars stolen and intentionally wrecked. The way it was explained to me was that they were left on the board but told their rule-making days were done. But hey, silver lining, the racial divide that used to split the complex in 2 basically disappeared after that. The Mexicans started inviting us to their giant picnics, and the whites started inviting them to game night keggers. Apparently, the secret to race relations is forming a biracial mob and beating people up. Well, apparently one positive aspect that is coming out of this whole HOA drama is that racial tensions are basically gone. Talking about making your neighborhood a better place. On to the next story. I'm pretty sure this will get buried in the comments, but my neighborhood growing up was part of a homeowners association and it was pretty bad. Garage sales were to be held only on one weekend in the spring and in the fall. You could not do it any other time. You could have signs out in your yard saying who you were voting for, but that was only during election season. You could not have a boat, trailer or an RV even if it was in your backyard or hidden. This caused problems for my family since we owned a trailer. You could not have a shed unless its shingles matched the shingles of the house and it had to be attached to the house. No exceptions. I thought this was dumb because sheds don't really decrease the value of homes too much, if at all. The shingles of your house had to be pre-approved by the HOA, and they made everyone get the same stupid, super cheap, ultra flammable shingles even when better ones were available on the market. after about 3 houses burned down in the span of about 5 years, only then did they decide it was time to allow people to get new shingles. Even the trees allowed were kinda dumb. Like, unless the tree was already on the property when the house was being built, you could not plant any tree you wanted. No, you had to plant a effing Bradford pear tree. For those of you who don't know what these are, they are the worst trees ever. When they blossom, it smells like a mix of rotting fish, chlorine, and semen, no exaggeration, even Wikipedia says so. And they split in half if caught by any strong winds, ice or lightning. But they grow quickly, which is why people like them, I suppose. The neighborhood looks progressively more and more barren every year. Did you ever have one of these trees? Let us know your experiences with that in the comments. On to the next one. During college I was interning at a golf course in a neighborhood, and one morning I was cutting the greens, and while I was riding from hole to hole I noticed a lot of vandalism. You could follow the joyride of destruction from hole to hole. The first green had a giant tear in it where someone had ran across it with a golf cart. The 150 marker had been run over on the second hole, the no cart path signs were destroyed on the fourth hole. This is also where I found a headlight for a golf cart, more on that later. On the 11th green he had taken the flagstick and shook it back and forth while it was in the cup, causing the hole to become really big and breaking the flagstick. Just a lot of vandalism, nearly $1,000 in damages. Well, since I had found a golf cart headlight and it did not match any of the course's carts, we knew it had to belong to someone in the neighborhood who owned a golf cart. We turned over the headlight to neighborhood security and they went around the neighborhood looking for the golf cart. Security comes back and tells us that they ended up finding the golf cart, the garage door was open and they noticed a muddy golf cart with a headlight missing. Bingo, got 'em, gotta sue them, right? That is what we have been talking about all morning, thinking that we were going to bag some 16-year-old kids. Wrong. The owner of the golf cart was hosting a bachelor's party the night of the incident. The driver of the golf cart just so happened to be a police officer in the county where the incident occurred. HOA decided not to press charges against the officer, and their logic behind it was that they don't want to give the police department a reason to not respond to a call in the neighborhood. My superintendent was effing pissed. If it was some teenager, they would have sued the kid for everything he was worth. If that same cop caught the teenager, he would have arrested him for it. Pretty effed up situation. The cops had to give my boss an apology and pay for all damages in order to not have charges pressed. You know, that is always one of the little things that I am afraid of when it comes to little cities. In this case, you can be pretty sure that the HOA basically works together with the police department, and probably, just my guess, more often than not, incidents might be swept under the rug in case it would affect an HOA member. How do you guys feel about that whole situation? Whenever I think about some sort of corrupt police or organization in small towns, I am always reminded of the fantastic Netflix series called Bates Motel. But anyway guys, unfortunately we reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's content. Please understand that the stories today were a little bit different because once again they were from an Ask Reddit thread, but I made sure to only pick some of the longer stories just so you guys are not disappointed. Once again, please let me know if you are up for some pro-revenge or nuclear revenge stories in the future, because I would really like to read some stories from those subreddits. But either way, I hope you have a fantastic day and I see you again tomorrow.